Okay.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the Snowy Valleys Council on Tuesday the 17th of October. I'd just like to read out the preamble, but prior to that I'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the country on which we meet today. I think it's important that we as Australians acknowledge the fact that these people have occupied our land for the last 60-odd thousand years, and we need to respect, one, their long association with the land, and two, their skills and ability in managing the landscape. I think it's very important that we have an understanding of what this land, that the rivers and the waters mean to them, and we respect their wisdom in managing, as I said, the land. So having done that, I'll now move on to the other preambles of the meeting, live streaming of council meetings. This meeting is live streamed on council's website to allow the community to follow council debates and decisions. Members of the public participating in the meeting agree to have their images, voice and personal information, including names and addresses, recorded and publicly broadcast. Snowy Valleys Council does not accept liability for any defamatory remarks or inappropriate comments that are made during the course of the meeting. Any part of the meeting that is held in closed session will not be streamed. Councillors are reminded of the oath of affirmation of office they made under section 233A of the Local Government Act of 1993 and the obligations under Council's Code of Conduct to disclose and appropriately manage conflicts of interest. Please ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or are in the silent mode for the duration of the meeting, and no recording of voice or images is permitted. In the event of an emergency at a council meeting, please evacuate the building using the nearest exit and follow the instructions given by the wardens. Do not use the lift. If participating in the meeting from an alternative venue, please enact the evacuation plan for that location if required. At this point in time, we have no one who is accessing the meeting from an alternative location. So I'll go to item 2 on the business paper, which is apologies, leaves of absence and remote attendance. I don't believe, Mr. General Manager, do we have any?
Not to my knowledge, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Item 3 is the declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any? If there is, I assume you've lodged them with the appropriate person. Correspondence and petitions. I don't believe there are any. Is that correct? Notice of motion.
Hang on.
Sorry.
Confirmation of minutes.
Confirmation of minutes. Right. Is there a mover? Councillor Livermore, a seconder. Councillor Ivell. Discussion? Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Now we'll go to correspondence and petitions. No correspondence and petitions. Notice of motion. Item 6. I believe we have a notice of motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Hayes. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ivell. Right. Debate.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think just reading through what's there, I think we need to keep on the front foot and just keep the pressure on with the government. Keep them aware that we're looking for extra income to keep us viable and to ease the pressure on the ratepayers. And I just think this is one way of just keeping the pressure on. Now, Councillor Thompson mentioned to me also that this possibly should go to the local government conference. I'm happy with that. as well as sending it to the Minister for Local Government and the Premier and our local members. So we could just add that in, but I think, it just shows that we're not asleep at the wheel.
You're happy to include that?
Yes, absolutely.
Is the seconder?
Thanks for that.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
So can we
Absolutely.
just have
Right.
the following motion be forwarded to Local Government New South Wales for consideration at conference,
Yes,
Correct?
and then include that? And then
There was a
let the
suggestion.
following motion be forwarded to Local New South Wales for consideration at the annual conference. And then that's the motion called upon. So that's conference, colon. And then, so the motion that's going to, this is the motion we're going to send from call.
Reminded Margaret.
Put that on the next line. Yep. And then down the bottom, we might have another bit that says after 5, that says further, that correspondence, that the resolution, the correspondence be forwarded to the Premier of New South Wales and the Minister for Local Government. On the financial sustainability challenges of local government.
You're going to include Christian McBone,
No, it's
Right, any further discussion?
Councillor Livermore.
Councillor Livermore?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, generally speaking, I'd support the bulk of the matters raised there. I guess one in particular I would take exception to is number 3, the impediment of maintaining rural centre employment numbers for merged councils. The reason I say that's when you go through the Act and look at the provisions relating to amalgamation of councils, that provision is about the only one that offers some impediment to government forcing mergers onto rural councils in particular. Now, the issue is it's not something that necessarily just affects the council. That's if it's implemented, and I see the irony in this because we never actually implemented this. But it also affects, you take a number of wages out of small rural centres, and that's the purpose of this. The government have recognised that there's something other than just the council's financial sustainability. It also relates to the wider community. You take wages out of a small rural place, you're taking activity out of the businesses. And I know that has happened in Tumba. So I think we need to be a little bit careful here, ourselves being a rural council, that we don't go wanting to promote something that is really an impediment to other small councils. And by taking that out of the legislation, you're really giving the government a clear pathway to further decimate small rural communities. So, that I just like councillors to rethink that.
Can I move that we go into committee? Because I think the reason I say that is that I think we need to actually act on what you're saying instead of just talking about it. So I'd move that we go
Moved.
into
Is there a
committee.
seconder? Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Ham, that we go into committee. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Righto, we're in committee.
I'd actually like to support what Councillor Livermore has
Councillor
just
Thompson.
said in relation to that clause within the merger process. And for many times it was said that the larger council will basically cannibalise the smaller councils, and that would have an enormous impact on the staff, the morale, but the community as well. And that's why the clause was put in place, to protect those small councils, so that they didn't suddenly become less and less viable as a community, not just as a council area. And so it's one that does concern me. I know that it has some drawbacks, but you need to look at the big picture This is not just about the one point.
I think the issue is it's discriminatory, and what it is discriminating against a certain section of the community. So, you know, are we all equal? Are some pigs more equal than the others?
Who are you discriminating against?
It's discriminating against the larger centre, who have to subsidise the smaller centres. So that's what you're doing. So, for example, if this, and this is only due the government to consider. It's not going to happen. It's just to consider, and it's something that we're concerned about. Well, I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the fact that the larger centre, in this case it would be Tumut, subsidising the smaller centres. Now that happens anyway. But why should, if there's job losses, why should they all come from here, from this building? Why shouldn't they be shared? Because we represent the whole community. We just don't represent where we live. Now, we can be parochial as we like, but when we're sitting around this table, we're supposed to be representing everyone. And to say that somebody is more equal than somebody else, it's just not on.
But can't you take in percentages too, population, things like that? You know, that needs to be taken into consideration.
I just don't think it's a good. I don't think it's a good clause. That's why I'm saying send it off and let the government decide, because I think it discriminates against people.
Speaking to
Councillor
you,
Armour.
speaking to you, Mr. Mayor, totally understand both sides of that argument. Can that be overcome by changing the word impediment to assess or to?
But it is an impediment.
Well, it's an impediment to someone. One
It's
side,
an impediment
maybe
to this
not the other.
organisation. It's an impediment to this organisation. It impedes it. It's an impediment.
Okay, well, I thought we could use another word that
Oh, yeah, well,
so
sure.
that it could be looked upon,
Sure,
because
there's
we are
others.
really asking the Premier and so forth to look at this. They're not going to do anything specifically. So could they look at it and analyse it?
Well, that's essentially what it says in that the challenge of local government, and to specifically address, and it's saying in note 3 that the impediment of maintaining rural centre employment numbers.
And I don't for a moment think that having a clause like this would impede the government from amalgamating councils if they so chose to. I think that's a ridiculous argument.
No, it doesn't necessarily, because obviously, it didn't.
No, it didn't. No, but at the same,
I think what are you implying there, Councillor Livermore? Are you implying the fact that
Well, the government
component?
the government forced a merger, right? Well, I think we're all aware of that. What I'm saying is, it is the one provision in there that potentially could make them think about, is this a good merger? You'd have to get them thinking. But the bottom line is, you take that out, you're saying there's actually nothing for them to even consider in relation to the impact of mergers on small communities. And it's not just about the impact on council's finances. This has far wider reaching effect.
Implications.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Thompson.
What's really interesting is that we hear time and time again that council is like no other business. We are not just a basic business that is just focused on income and outcome and things. We have an incredibly complex, and I remember when I first got on local government, it was a jigsaw, and there were the 5 pieces of the jigsaw, which includes your governance and your employment and your environment, but it also includes your civics and your community. And part of the responsibility that we have as elected representatives, and this isn't ongoing forever, this is to protect those small communities in, I think it's the first 5 years following a merger.
No, it's forever. It's forever.
It is forever. That's correct. What the what the clause actually says, which is 218 CA, is that employment numbers are be retained at the rural centre as far, I'll not find it again, as far as is reasonably practicable.
It was
Yes.
practical to start with.
So it's not actually cast in stone.
No, it's not.
No,
But I guess the general manager would, need to make a pretty good argument to the councillors that it wasn't reasonably practicable to maintain the numbers at
okay.
the rural centre.
Well, if I can, well, we look at the presentation that we've had today where we have 20 vacancies. I'm sure that not all of those vacancies are in one area or from one location. So when we start reviewing those positions and the services that they're providing, there is the opportunity to evolve the organisation and through restructures. I have a real concern that, and I heard it time and again, that Tumut would take over Tumbarumba and that Tumbarumba would start to lose its identity and lose its opportunity to growth if we removed the council aspect from that community. And, local government, as I said, is not like any other business. We need to take into consideration the many spinning plates, and we need to, just like we provide childcare in Tumbarumba, we don't provide childcare in Tumut. Just like Tumbarumba manages its Chamber of Commerce, sorry, not Chamber of Commerce, the Visitor Centre. We don't do that on our own here. So we've already got anomalies across our local government area. And I think that we need to be respectful of each of our smaller communities and ensure that we don't take away their opportunity to continue to thrive.
Any further discussion? Well,
Well,
you raised the issue.
that's on that point 3.
Yeah.
The only other one I have, point 4. There's a bit of an anomaly there in that, okay, if we get grant funding to upgrade an asset, if we're smart about how we spend that grant funding, that should reduce our costs on that asset. If it's a matter of we're going to get grant funding for new assets, we've got to think very, very careful, can we afford to have them? And there is always a word in the English language, it's no. You can say no to the grant. You don't have to necessarily take them. So, yeah, I don't think that's going to go anywhere at government level. I'd much prefer to see us put a lot more emphasis on things like the emergency services levy, getting rid of that, because that's going to amount to a lot more money if we could get government to meet their responsibilities for funding their organisations than the little bit of assistance you might get for ongoing operational costs.
Well, do you want to add that in?
Well, by all means, if you want to put some words to that effect.
Well, happy
Just
to
a
take
minute.
your word.
Councillor Ham.
I just following up of what
There.
Councillor Livermore said about the ongoing operational funding. Having been a new councillor at the time of the new council, looking at all these new things that were given to us, and a lot of them have made our service centres better. And then watching the bottom line get worse and worse and worse because there was no operational funding. I just think it's a very good point to leave in there strongly, because if you're going to give all this, what sort of money are you going to call it? Gift money to make you feel better about your forced merger. They forgot to give that side of it, which has now put us in the situation we are now.
Well, they did, but also
They didn't give us operational
They
funding.
forgot.
you've got to cast your mind back to why there were mergers. If you remember, the argument was
There were many theories.
councils were going broke, and all that was based on depreciations and so on. So the very thing that they accused councils of
They then
sending
gave you-
themselves broke and we're going to have to merge you are the things now they're promoting.
Yeah,
I still think.
So
it became political.
Getting back to the emergency services levy, there is item 1 deals with the emergency services levy.
Yeah.
So do we have the exact figure of that?
Yeah, that was sent through
750.
today.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, while that figure is being looked up,
Sorry?
through you, while that figure is being looked up to give Jessica time to do it, can't we just, councillor Hayes, take the word, what is it again? Impediment and put impact there.
Yep,
Put in,
happy for that.
Take impediment out of number 3
yeah.
and just change it for impact. That way it's non-judgmental.
And just to clarify with council, that amount is 786,000.
786. Because I think that'd be worth putting into that motion just to sort of give a bit of a quantum. If the mover's happy.
780.
Yeah, with those two changes, I'm happy with that.
6,
I just
707.
currently in, maybe,
If it's possible later on, can we put in the percentage of our general rates income, that is? Which might just,
we can do that as part of the note.
part of nice, which encapsulates.
As a percentage.
Yeah, that's
Because you have to give background for local government New South Wales.
Transfer. Yeah, transfer the human service will be. Can we just can we take out the word transfer and put just the emergency services levy for Snowy Valleys Council being 786,707 in the 23-24 financial year? If the mover and seconder are happy with that?
Yes.
And while we're discussing things, we couldn't put a 0.6 about
We've got
the,
6, we've got a 7.
Not about,
not 7,
about the Lower Vago Road or Charles?
the early childhood education and care, thank you.
On the back.
No, shouldn't we be mentioning the, how rate pegging is really, like now we're going through another special rate variation and the time and the energy that it's taking from all staff and everything like that. Aren't we at the stage that councils should go out to the public, this is what we want to achieve, this is how we're going to achieve it, and these are the rates we need, instead of being hampered by IPART telling us what, when and how we can put our rates up?
Well, it's sort of covered in
Yeah.
point
Sort
2,
of point
where it
2,
says the
so it's
antiquated
all-
rating system and its restrictions on council's ability to raise appropriate levels of revenue.
Well, then I agree with point 2.
We can
I thought you
incorporate
would,
point 6 into point 2.
Point 7.
Righto, so
Thank you, councillor Ham.
Pleasure. Pleasure.
Well
Well,
worth
as
highlighting
always.
anyway.
at this point in time, are the mover and seconder happy
With
with
those
those
changes?
amendments? Yes. Or inclusions? Righto,
Do we need to come out of committee?
yeah.
Oh, we've done that.
There's nothing else we need to consider. Very good. Someone move or go out of committee? Moved like councillor Oliver, I'm sure I saw his hand go.
I did, yeah.
Councillor Hayes, Hughes, I should
Hughes.
say.
Rise away.
I'll put the motion, all those in favour, against, carried. Right, is there any further debate? If not, I'll put the
No,
motion, sorry,
with the changes.
No, we're happy with those changes, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Happy with those changes?
happy with the changes? Right, I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Against, carried. Righto, we now go to, I think, 9.1, is it?
Correct.
Yes.
Page 30.
Nine one.
You might like to sit up and here, councillor.
Attendance at the Regional Rising National Summit,
Stellar report.
Regions Rising National Summit.
Here, here. Here.
There's a recommendation, someone move? Councillor Ham, seconder, Councillor Thompson, any debate?
I will just say I spoke on it last meeting, so I won't speak on it now, but just a typo that the CEO's name is Liz Ritchie. If that could be just changed in the minutes.
Very good. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against, carried. 9.2, proposed change to the code of conduct meeting practice.
Moved.
Been moved by councillor Hayes, who's the seconder.
Just before
Councillor
we,
Hughes,
put
my
that-
apologies.
hang on, Mayor, can
Mr.
we,
General
can
Manager.
we move the adoption of it subject to an alteration of clause 4.12, which will read, the general manager or their delegate is to determine the order of speakers at the public forum, but will normally be in the order in which the speakers register.
Is the mover and seconder happy to do that? Councillor Ham,
Yep.
councillor Hughes? Righto.
Normally
Is there any debate?
in the order. Haven't got the in order, be in the order.
If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Register.
Okay, are you abstaining or are you voting
No,
no?
that's, I've moved it.
I just didn't see your hand.
Yeah. Deft,
Or perhaps I wasn't looking.
maybe.
Will normally be in the order
We'll now go to 9.3.
with the speakers register.
I'll move that.
Been moved, seconded. Councillor Ivel, been moved by councillor Hayes, seconded by councillor Ivel. Any discussion?
I'd like to speak.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just think it's really important to note that while we approve the following ordinary meeting dates at 2 p.m. at Tumut Council Chambers, I think it's important that we are aware that at some stage it is really prudent for us to move beyond these council chambers for some of our council meetings and to actually engage with some of the wider community. Nowadays, with so many things able to be done via Zoom team and technology, I just believe that, you know, we need to not look as if the only place that we can conduct business is here. So it's in there and it'll stay there, but I think we need to be mindful that we can call for a different venue at some stage.
Very good. Any further comment? If not, I'll put,
Sorry. The only other
councillor Thompson.
The other comment that I would like to make is that for me personally, I don't approve with cancelling the January meeting. I think to go from December to February without a council meeting, especially with the things that we have on our plate as elected local government representatives, we're looking closely at finances, we're looking at the demerger proposal, we have budgets that need to be done. I am aware that we can call for an extraordinary meeting under extenuating circumstances, but I think that to lose 2 months out of our calendar and our program is a long time for us to not be engaged with some of the workshops. So I suppose what I'm saying is that if there's that opportunity, I think we need to engage in at least workshops to bring us up to speed and be informed between the 15th of December and the 15th of February. Thank you.
I certainly concur with the fact that we need to engage in workshops during that period of time. Do you wish to move an amendment to the fact that we hold a meeting in January? But I'm prepared to call a meeting in January if the necessity arises.
I think if we have that understanding, or at least if we can have workshops, I just feel that 2 months is a long time to go.
I agree.
But I doubt that the majority have an appetite for the inclusion of those. So if we can call extraordinary meetings if required, I'd leave it at that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ivel.
I concur. I concur with what you're saying, but also don't forget that a lot of the information that we would be using or utilising in those meetings are delivered by staff here, and they will probably be on leave, or they're not here to provide that information. So you need to be mindful of that as well.
I'll take on board your comments, Councillor Ivel. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just I
Councillor Hayes.
suppose that by just saying I hope there's no need for an extraordinary meeting in January.
We'll wait and see. Right?
And
I hate to interrupt your long weekend.
No, it's not that. I just hope there's no need for an extraordinary meeting.
Very good.
if I could, Mr. Mayor,
Councillor
just
Ham.
through to the General Manager, There's nowhere here. We'll still have workshops anyhow, won't we?
Well, look, I'd suggest that we'll schedule a workshop on what would be the normal council meeting day in
Yeah.
January.
Yeah, on the 18th. Yeah.
And then, and because it's quite right, there's a number of topical issues at the moment, so, at the very least, we could share that information in a workshop.
Very good. No further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, 9.4. Christmas closures. Talking about Christmas closures. Is there a mover?
Yep.
Councillor Hayes, seconder. Second, I'll second it myself. Yes.
Councillor Ivors.
Councillor Ivor. Right. Discussion?
This way, that's
Hopefully everyone has a good Christmas.
Yes.
Happy Christmas.
particularly the staff.
And
No
particularly.
further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. 9.5.
I'll move that.
Draft payment to expenses, provisions and facilities for the mayor and councillors policy goes out for public exhibition. Been moved. Councillor Ham, seconder. Councillor Armour, any debate? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you kindly. 9.6. Draft media and social media policy for public exhibition. Is there a mover? Councillor Thompson, you moving?
I am.
Seconder, Councillor Ham, discussion. Councillor Thompson,
I was just going to, in the interest for the community to have probably an understanding, whether or not through you, Mr. Mayor, we could just direct it to the Director of Community and Corporate, just to outline the difference between this policy and the previous policies that were out in place. The fact that we've now incorporated the social media into the other media.
Mr. Director.
Correct, through you, Mr. Mayor. Previously, council had two separate policies, one being a media policy and one being a social media policy. But last year, I think it was, the OLG released a model code, a model media and a model social media policy. So council has adopted that model as it is considered best practice. Instead of having the two separate policies, it's around the same subject and around the same framework and parameters. So we have just decided to combine them.
Thank you.
Thank you kindly. Any further debate? Councillor Ham?
Just on this discussion, it's just something I do follow the council's social media, and I'm not sure who does it, but I think they deserve to be complimented. They are attractive. They're easy to read. They're up to date, and who is responsible, my personal thanks.
Thank you very much.
We'll pass that on.
Well done.
Councillor Ham.
No further comments? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. $10.9.7 pecuniary interest returns. I think they're on the web, aren't they?
Yep.
Someone move the recommendation. Councillor Ivor, seconder. Councillor Livermore. Discussion.
Just a
Councillor
correction.
Thompson.
Correction, Mr. Mayor. I must have had pen override. In my pecuniary interest declaration, there's actually an incorrect address for a sale of a property. It should be 126 Capper Street, not 128 Capper Street. So if that could be corrected, thank you.
Lord, thank you very much indeed. No further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. 9.8, presentation of annual financial statements. You wish to make a comment here, Mr. General Manager?
Well, look,
Prior to moving the motion, or do you think I should move to have the motion?
yeah, move the motion, please.
Mover of the motion?
Can you move it?
Councillor Ham, second. Councillor Hayes. Righto, Councillor, I don't know whether I'm promoting you or demoting you, Mr. General Manager.
Look, the only comment I'll make is that, we're yet to receive the conduct of the audit report and the independent auditor's report. We do believe that they're imminent. And at this stage, we're unaware of any issues that would cause a material change to the numbers that have been presented to councillors, but we haven't received them. I'm not sure, Pativ, whether you've got had any correspondence with them today as to how long that might be, but we haven't got them in our hot little hand as we speak.
At this point in time.
Through the chair, I tried contacting the auditors yesterday. I haven't got any response yet.
Right.
Very
Yeah.
good. Any comments from any Councillor Ham?
If I could just ask a question to the General Manager, looking at these, okay, simplistically, just looking at them, much better result this year than last year. Is that directly because of the special rate variation coming through?
Oh, well, I think it certainly had a positive impact. There's no doubt about that. But it's a slightly better result than last year. I think would be the terminology I would use, Pativ. Slightly better.
Slight.
But I mean, it's just good to know that special rate variation is making a difference.
Yep.
And that was 17.5, was it, this year?
Correct.
Yes, and now we're on to another one.
Potentially.
Potentially. What's in
This
this
financial
year?
year,
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
previous. Other questions?
Are you
Councillor
taking
Livermore?
questions on
On the statements?
the recommendation or the statements? Look, there's a few little things, and I know the statements seem to be a never-changing feast in terms of the balances and so on, because the statements are what it was as at the 30th of June. So here we are in October. So things have changed. Just one, and because I've raised this a number of times, one little discrepancy in the statements, and I always look at the unrestricted cash. It's one of the first things I'll go to. The statement saying as at the 30th of June, 105,000. Now that included the 73,000, which I had raised on a number of occasions in the Camp Hudson Reserve, which I think had been expended prior to the 30th of June. So when you take that 73 off, the actual unrestricted cash is 32 grand. So I'd nearly be prepared to match that with a loan for council if they're struggling. But other than that, a lot of the other things, I suppose some of the operating, the own source operating revenue benchmark is down. And as I say, there's different little anomalies through the statements, and they're a bit of a moving beast. But I suppose the biggest comment I will make will be when the motion gets put, I guess.
Sorry?
You want to, well, when the recommendation there is put.
Right. So we've moved and seconded the recommendation.
We have we?
That's right.
Okay. I didn't. Sorry. Part 5 of that, where it says to approve a reserve fund transfer of 70,000 towards the Batlow Itinerant Workers Accommodation Project. Now, and I realise some of our finance staff have come post the amendments we made to the financial reserves policy. And in that, we specifically put in a clause to prevent this happening, to say that no money can be transferred from a reserve without the prior approval of council, or words to that effect. So, I mean, to me, I don't know how we approve that retrospectively. I'd prefer to see that instead of approve, that we note that. And the reason I talk about that is because the overrun, as I understand it, was 320,000, wasn't 70,000. But the other 250,000 was gained by someone in the organisation saying, well, we won't pay the development contributions. Now, it doesn't really matter much whether they were Section 64s for water, sewer, or whether they were 711 contributions, because they're all should have gone into an externally restricted fund. So the issue isn't so much about the externally restricted fund, it's more about the fact that you've got an adopted fee set by council and someone's decided, well, we're running short of dough, we won't worry about it. Now, while I understand the job still has to be paid for, but in my way of thinking, for this, these should have come to council so that they can be considered, and the justification for these should have also included, here's how we intend to make good that money whenever. So with the caravan park, it might be, when the receipts from the caravan park come in, there might be an opportunity there to then reimburse those funds for the money that should have gone in. So that, as I say, I think we need to draw a line in the sand and say you cannot just take money without the approval of council. It's that simple. It's no slight on anybody. And as I say, I understand there's a number of people have come and they may not be aware of that provision. But I think that sort of way of doing business was
Only that I agree with.
partly why we're in the position we're in.
So how did you even find out about it, Councillor McMillan?
About what?
That the money was, that the development application wasn't,
Well, that was stated at the ARIC meeting.
right, okay.
I think in the August meeting, we were advised of that. And they basically, that discussion at that meeting talked about the overrun, but they decided that exempt themselves
On
the contribution fees, and then they took the remaining 70 grand out of the caravan park reserve.
And
And the question is, who is they?
that's 70,000.
Well, look, I don't think it matters about who is they. I think the question is, there needs to be this needs to be the last time it's happened, because this has been happening historically, and there's just been no control over the funds. Now, if we had to take money or give an exemption from development contribution, all right, we can probably bear that, but the report outlining that should also be saying, here's how we're going to
How we get around
make
Rectify the
restitution,
situation,
rectify
make
that
good.
down the track. Whereas otherwise, it just goes through, it's gone.
Do you wish to make a comment there?
Oh, look, only that, I concur with the comments that Councillor Livermore's made, and that, there should have been a report to council on both. That's what we'll be endeavouring to do in the future.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I had the feeling that at some point in time there was comment made about waiving the development charges. But I'm not sure. It certainly wasn't a resolution of council, but I just had the feeling that.
No, well, that's what was explained at
That's
the
right.
ARIC meeting.
That's right.
There was a
which none of the other councillors were privy to.
That's right.
$320,000 overrun, but
That's how they funded
they
it.
juggled that by saying, well, we won't pay the development contribution fees.
And
So
we'll take
then the
70
other
grand.
70.
Out of the reserve.
Mr Mayor,
Out of reserves.
2 points from Councillor.
Councillor Hayes?
2 points from Councillor Livermore's dissertation. I think it highlights the need, I think, and I mentioned this earlier before the meeting, that we probably need to have the income from the caravan parks go into the caravan park reserve, so that we do have
And understand.
funds at the time, and we know how much the income that they're generating, and we do have the funds at the time to pay for things like this. The second point that he mentioned was that the Camp Hudson, where it seems that we had a reserve that wasn't cash backed.
No, No, I think
They
the,
didn't say that, I don't
no,
think.
the issue is we've expended the money, but we've still got it listed as a
Still,
reserve.
still listed as a reserve.
So you've got a reserve that's not cash backed.
No, we haven't got the reserve. The reserves, Cape.
But you're
Cape
listing.
Hudson's- Camp Hudson shouldn't be listed in the reserves,
Okay,
internal reserves.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Well, you're probably right.
Yeah.
There's no cash for
There's
it.
no cash.
Yes.
But it shouldn't be
But
there
it shouldn't be.
because the cash is gone.
I think we've been there before.
There's a number of, yeah, fair enough. I think the future looks better than the past. Righto, no further discussion? I'll put the
Did we-
motion.
Just
Sorry.
before you put the motion, did councillor Livermore either want to
Change the word.
change the word
Note.
5, the
Well,
movement second to a
I
happy, or just
personally
want the
would feel more
amendment,
comfortable.
Well, do you want to move it as an amendment?
or the movement second to happy to change the word adopt?
Move and second are happy to include that
Approve.
as note rather than approve.
Oh, yes.
Righto.
Very happy for that.
If you're both happy with that, we'll
Thank you,
make
Jenny.
that amendment. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against, carried. Nine, eight.
That one is-
9, aren't we?
9.9. Statement of investments. Is there any, sorry, so is there a mover and a seconder? Moved councillor Ham, seconded councillor Livermore. Is there any discussion?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking
Councillor
at
Ham.
on page 57, the Pioneer Park and Goldfields Park supply and installation of anti-vandalism amenity buildings. Yesterday, I was lucky enough to be taken to around the new one down at the Goldfields Park by the manager of technical services to find that
The gentleman over there with the bow tie.
the one with the bow tie, that's the one. To find that it seems to be a sport in Tumbarumba to see if you can vandal the anti-vandal amenities, and some damage had been done. So just found that incredibly disappointing because a lot of what's been done down there does look fantastic, better than I thought it would, but very disappointed to see that's happened. And I think there's talk of maybe that we get some cameras in there. Is that true? Maybe to the manager of technical services.
Is cameras in a toilet possible?
No,
No.
around the
No,
toilet.
around the toilet.
Through
Well,
the,
they are possible, but maybe we won't go there.
through the general
Manager of
manager,
technical
we
service.
are looking at cameras off the facility, not in the facility, for priority. And we're working through the process and community engagement needs around that and restrictions on access, etc.
Councillor Thompson.
Councillor Ham, I hear what you're saying and I get where you're coming from. It's not an issue that is specific to the toilets in Tumbarumba, and we actually had a motion on the books or a resolution on our books that I have no idea where we went with in relation to the vandalism and the issues that are occurring in this community, and one of those issues was talking about cameras as well. I am constantly being sent photos and updates of the vandalism of the anti-vandalism swings and playground equipment that we have in this region. It's not specific to Tumbarumba and the toilets up there. And if we're genuinely going to look at how we resolve this, can I request that we go back and look at the resolution we had on our books, which was to meet with our local police force and develop a strategy of how we manage the vandalism across Snowy Valleys Council, because it's not just about one set of toilets. And with all due respect, I'm waiting to see how long it takes the vandals to put a match to some of the equipment down in the new Rotary Pioneer Park that is all redwood timber. So I'd like that we look at the resolution that we already have on the books and look at it across our local government area and not just target one specific toilet. Sorry.
Councillor Ivell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's great to have cameras in these locations. Fantastic. But who polices it? does it go to the police? Do they act on it? Is it something that's followed through, or is it just something that's a feel good?
It's a deterrent.
Can,
Sure.
can someone tell me where the cameras reside, well, not reside, where the
Hard drive.
where the archives are? Where do, does
Through-
anybody know where all this stuff
In the
goes?
cloud?
Hmm?
In the cloud?
Cloud. Right.
Through the general manager, different sites previously had recording areas where it was chained for, I think, up to 30 days. That's all part of the project that we're looking into with the cameras. What are the needs of police for response and action? Who has access, minimising access, and also making sure that the right engage or provision of information tool is in place with the New South Wales Police for that data.
So at present, we could be recording this, we could not be recording it. We don't know exactly where it is, and
Most of our cameras are offline at the moment, especially the ones in the Goldfields Parks. They've all been taken off. So yeah, we're limited in the number that we have at the moment.
very good.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, should we not? be
Councillor
going-
Armour,
Should we not be going into committee? Because
if you wish.
Yes, I'd move so.
Moved by Councillor Armour, seconded by
Happy to
Councillor
support.
Ham, that we move into committee. Yep. Put the motion, all those in favour? Against? Carried.
And I say that because if we go back to that original motion we put 18 months ago or so, it was very much based on what Councillor Ivor was saying, because there is some real integrity as to how the police and how we maximise the use of this sort of equipment, and unless it's done in a coordinated fashion
Consistent with the
and
law.
consistently, we're not going to have the right evidence for the right occasion in the right place. So it really needs to go back to the original motion we put, where we work together with the police force and work out what the strategy for our Snowy Valleys Council is.
I'm sure that the general manager has taken on board those comments.
I've taken a
Thank
note of
you.
it, Mr Mayor.
I
Councillor Hughes,
think there's, I think you can police something and it'll never stop it from being vandalised. The more you disenfranchise people, the more they'll vandalise stuff and the more they'll disconnect from what we're trying to achieve. Put a camera on it. It'll probably get smashed because it's disenfranchising. It's putting weight on people's ability to have a livelihood and a livable town and a livable place. If you want to protect all of your stuff and don't put anything out. So there's a certain amount when you go to the police and talk about how do we police this and how do we find that and how do we bring these criminals to justice. Also talk to them about livability. How are we going to approach the communities, parts of the communities that are disenfranchised by the sort of things that we do, and be smarter about our urban planning as well as our security systems. I think they have to be hand in hand.
it's interesting that you should say that, Councillor Hughes, because whose assets are these? They're the community's assets, the people in their own towns and villages whose assets are being vandalised by essentially the citizenry of those towns and villages.
I also like to point out that we don't have a functioning youth programs, and they're not well connected. And these are the obviously what you were really bashing around the bush for. We're talking about the youth destroying our property. Whose property exactly?
And it comes back to what I think you were alluding to, was the engagement with our communities in saying, look, we need to manage the outcomes that we're getting, and it's part of the community's responsibility. It doesn't rest with, we shouldn't get to this place in the first place. There should be, and look, it's not hasn't been a common occurrence in Tumbarumba. Why is it emerging? It's probably an issue that we could spend some time down here in Tumut, but I do think it's not just a case of policing it or jumping on people. It's a case of promoting that fact that it is a community effort.
Community pride.
It's ours. You know what I mean? Councillor Ivor?
Councillor Thompson and myself would remember we had a representation from police 6 months ago, maybe a little bit more. And that was the focus of their conversation as well, is not necessarily identifying individuals or groups and throwing the book at them. It was more about how can we engage with them as a community and give them some diversionary advice and activities to take them away from that behaviour. And they were quite upfront about it.
Based on the fact that it's been raised again, I'm sure that the general manager will take on board and we'll get some progress down that line. So,
And I think we had the chief superintendent from Wagga came across, and he was one that gave us that.
Yeah.
It was a really good presentation.
We'll certainly locate that resolution, Mr Mayor, and bring a report back to council.
right, any further discussion? If not, someone move, we go back into council.
A certain amount of vandalism is about putting my ownership on that. If you vandalise something, you want to scribble your name on it, you scratch it, or you break glass, you can say to your friends and everybody else around you that I now have an impact on that item in my environment. And we sit around the table here, we've got a lot of impact on the environment. But when you're a disenfranchised 13-year-old without a car, without a family, without a structure, without any of these sort of things, roaming the streets at night, you don't have any effect on your environment, and you want to make an effect on the environment. And how many ways can they affect their environment?
Sorry, Councillor Hughes, I disagree with that totally. Going and busting somebody else's property or damaging somebody else. Hang on.
Oh, no, you're right. You're totally
let me
right.
finish.
I'm not saying it's right.
Listen to you, let me finish.
I'm not saying it's right.
Going and doing what they do to other people's property in the community that we, as ratepayers, have to repair isn't acceptable.
It's not
Isn't
acceptable,
acceptable.
but it's need to be understood. In that moment, I don't think there's enough understanding it.
I understand it.
Oh, good.
I understand it, but we don't.
We're
But
not doing
I won't accept that they go and do something to a piece of infrastructure because they want to put their label on. Sorry, I won't accept that. That's rubbish.
But that's what they do.
It's rubbish.
Very good, Rhino. Any
So,
further?
I just,
Just a minute. Oh, gee whiz. Rhino, councillor.
and we
Thompson.
didn't think that the statement of investment would actually instill such great discussion and debate. There you go.
I'll be out in the hall of comment.
No, you won't. I listen to both sides, and I think if we come to the sensible middle is that I certainly don't agree with vandalism, and I certainly don't think that we should just go, oh, that's. But I hear behind what Councillor Hughes is also saying, and we reintroduced our youth council without even fully understanding what that youth council was going to look like. And just as we've said to people about this merged council, and if we become demerged or de-amalgamated, whatever term we use, we're never going back to the two identical entities that we had before. And so we've reintroduced a youth council without fully understanding what that youth council could or should look like. And my understanding is Councillor Hughes is our delegate for youth. So we need to understand what it is that we may be able to do to deter these young people from doing something inappropriate and rechannel that energy into being constructive and productive and having something to feel good about. Maybe they would like to do a proper mural, and then Lord help anybody who impacts on their mural or their something that they've been involved with, and that's when they understand
Ownership.
the ownership. So I get both sides. Councillor Hughes, I certainly do not endorse young people vandalising things, but I also think that we as adults need to listen to what our young people would like to do with the youth council and not impose what we as adults think they should.
And that's what the police officer said that day.
Yep.
It's about diversionary,
Yep.
inclusive activities.
Yep.
It's not about punishing people.
No.
It's not about the big finger approach. It's about getting their mindset away from that behaviour into something that's more positive for the community.
But we don't accept the behaviour.
No.
But we
Very
give
good.
them an
Bring a
alternative.
report back.
Thank you very much, councillor Ham, for managing the discussion. You wish to
I'm sure that
go
was
back
good
into
for you.
council?
That's exactly what
Is
you
there a mover, councillor Ham? Is there a second, councillor Armour? I'll move the motion. All those in favour, against, carried. Now, someone moves the motion regarding,
We've got them.
it's been
Been moved,
moved and
Hannah,
seconded. It
we've-
has, that's right. I'll put the motion. If there's no further debate, all those in favour, against, carried. I know, 10-1. Donation to the Heritage Gold mining equipment at Adelong. Someone wish to move the motion?
I'll move it because I want to ask a question as well.
Councillor Thompson, is there a seconder?
Happy to second.
Councillor Ham. Councillor Thompson, question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the concern that I have, and I don't think I'm probably the only one, is that we're seeing the pictures and we all think it's going to be wonderful to have this heritage out so that everyone can see it, appreciate it, understand it, and
Right.
the tourism and promote it. The concern I have looking at the photos is in this piece of equipment being transported, who's liable if there is any damage to it between getting it out of where it's buried at the moment and getting it to its new site? So what happens, I know council is looking and we're only being asked for X amount, but it does in our report indicate that we will pay for any ongoing maintenance damage and things like that. So I'm just looking at where it currently is
Long-term implications.
and wondering what happens if it gets damaged in endeavouring to relocate it. Does anyone have?
Anyone wish to comment?
Mr. Beauchamp?
Mr.
Through the general
Director of, sorry, Manager of
Never wear a better tie.
Absolutely.
Technical.
So I guess we'll
Sure.
undertake detailed assessment of the wheels prior to moving them, and record that and ensure that the appropriate securing options are undertaken while the transport is undertaken. So, yeah, obviously with chain of responsibility, we need to make sure that they're secure while transported. So that will be undertaken.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Any further comments? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against, carried. No. So next item is 11.1. 11.1. 11.1, extra audit risk and improvement committee meeting. Recommendations, there's a series of recommendations. Is there a mover? Councillor Ham, seconder. Councillor Livermore, discussion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ham?
I attended this ARIC committee meeting and it was very sobering. We've got a new general manager who was not going to beat around the bush and tell us
Tell us how it
exactly
was.
and tell us how it was. And for this, the committee did say they wanted the recommendation to be very clear of our financial situation. And for that recommendation, the recommendation, particularly in point 2, I asked the councillors and the general community to read this and just be aware of the concerns in our financial sustainability. Do you have anything more to?
Do you wish
Nothing
to
I'll
make a
add.
comment?
Not really.
I think the recommendations are pretty specific. I think
Yeah.
you would be naive if you didn't get the full impact of what's being said here. To me, it's a real concern that we've got to this position, and it hasn't happened. Of recent times, this has been going on since day one, and I think had this council been better informed as to the situation as it stands now, when we discussed the special rate variation back in February of the year before? No, last year, we probably would have realised that 40 or 36.5 or 37% wasn't sufficient. However, it is what it is now, and I think it's important that one, we acknowledge what the situation is, and two, that we are now embarking upon various mechanisms to endeavour to put the situation right. I don't know, does anyone else have a comment?
Look, I just direct those councillors and particularly yourself, Mr Mayor, back to the comments that were thrown around before this council started. And that the idea of a 25% special rate variation was outrageous.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. You know, and yourself, who sat on the ARIC committee, you know, you should have had some idea about it, but those comments were made, and now you're saying that we need more. So
look, at the end of the day,
reflection's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. However, you know, and I'd like to point this out, when I did raise this issue as a short-term member of the ARIC committee, didn't want to hear it. Look, it is what it is, and you know, we've found ourselves in this position, as I said, over a long period of time. The reality is that the situation's got to be corrected. I think we've already identified a number of areas that we can move in, and there'll be a process going forward to endeavour to address the situation. Some of the issues are of our own making. Some of the issues are of the making of the idea that a merger was a wonderful proposition and we had all these potential savings. Well, the reality is totally different to that, and I think you would have to agree, Councillor Hayes, as having been the mayor of the previous council.
And also a councillor previous to that, not in favour of amalgamation.
And you know, I just look at the what would you say, the reasoning behind a merger of Tumut and Tumbarumba was completely flawed. The so-called potential savings were illusionary, to say the least, or imaginary. And we as a community across the whole of Snowy Valleys Council have been the victims of those, you know, misplaced views. However, sorry, would you like to make a comment, Mr.?
Yeah, look, what I would say is that I think what the mayor says is quite right, is that unfortunately, the benefits of amalgamation as promoted at the time have never been forthcoming, not for Snowy Valleys or for most rural councils that I'm aware of. You only have to look at our neighbours, Snowy Monaro, who've gone through a similar process of a significant special rating variation. Federation Council last year applied for 77%, I think, or something in that range. Hilltop's the same. We're not unique. We've identified the problem. We need to ensure that we put strategies in place to fix it. That's probably what I would say. We're not unique. We know what the problem is. We need to try and fix it.
We've certainly identified the problem. So if there's no further discussion, I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Pardon me. 11.2, meeting of the Tumbarumba Floodplain Risk Management Committee. Is there a mover? Councillor Livermore? Councillor Ham? Oh, sorry, that was your hand. We'll have to move this screen here. It's a
Councillor Ivor, was it?
Ivor.
Councillor Ivor, was it?
Yep.
Oh,
Wrong.
You saw a hand of it.
which figure are you? Oh, sorry, I misread that. Oh, no. Councillor Ivor, my apologies.
Oh, this one, not that one.
Is there any questions, any comment that you would like to make, Councillor Livermore? If not,
No, Mr Mayor, only the meeting in September there that's mentioned was the inaugural meeting of that committee. So, we got a bit of a rundown on the process from the consultants, WMA Water. So they're off now, and they've got a fairly comprehensive community consultation program. that they'll undertake. They did take note of some comments from local people at that meeting. You know, who are the good people to talk to with the lived experience of floods and so on. So, yeah, so it'll just matter now for them to, they'll come back to the committee. We won't meet again until they've actually got some completed work to be considered.
Very good. No further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And I believe now, Mr. General Manager, we're going to committee of the whole.
Correct, Mr Mayor.
Would someone move? Councillor Ham, a seconder, Councillor Thompson. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?